Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. My name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery coach and author of the book, A Life to Die For. This is episode 172, The Akashic Voice. Now, the Akashic Records refers to a kind of universal database of events, thoughts, words, emotions, and intentions, whether they are associated with the past, the present, or the future. These recorded details are not restricted to humans. They relate to all entities, life forms, and energy forms everywhere. It's generally believed that the database is stored within the zero-point energy field and that the records are accessible by anyone who understands the communication mechanism. Edgar Cayce, a well-known psychic from the past, had a gift for reading and understanding the Akashic Records, and he gave countless readings to hundreds, maybe thousands of clients over his lifetime. And not only that, but many of his teachings have inspired others to learn to find, read, and interpret these records, not only for themselves, but also for others who seek the information. So one such reader is my guest for today's episode, who has devoted many years studying and writing about the subject. She is a spiritual teacher, author, and actual voice of the Akashic Records. Her international best-selling book, Akasha Unleashed, The Missing Manual to You, a quick start guide to using the Akashic Records, has become a catalyst for personal transformations across the globe. So please join me in welcoming the delightful and wonderful Debbra Lupien to our show today. Welcome, Debbra.
Hey there.
Hope to see you on camera here.
It's coming up.
Okay, there it is.
Here I am.
Yeah,
Thanks
well,
for
welcome.
having me, David. It's delight to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I know that we've exchanged energies on different episodes in different places with the Wellness Universe and elsewhere. I think I'm most curious about one thing. I guess what I'd like to do is start with this question. What happened in your life that led you to seek out or learn from the Akashic Records and then to become an expert on these records yourself? Tell us a little bit about that part of your journey.
Well, I had this horse who had some real issues. She had been physically and emotionally traumatized. And in trying to help her, one of the things I looked into was animal communication. And when I did that, it woke up that latent psychic ability. And then I remembered, oh, when I was 4, I used to see Jesus all the time. Right. So that made me curious. I wanted to know more. So I started studying various modalities. I tried mediumship for a while, but I didn't find that really satisfying. And eventually I was led to the Akashic Records. And when I got there and I learned about my soul, I was introduced. It was like heaven opened up and the angels sang, "Welcome home, baby." And it's been that way ever since.
That sounds pretty amazing. I mean, so you didn't have any kind of a traumatic event in your own life. It was a horse that led you to look into this.
Yeah, I was trying to help the horse.
Yeah, well, horses are beautiful, amazing creatures. And yeah, I mean, yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of animals that do get abused and mistreated in this world. And it doesn't just happen to people, although it happens too much to them as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So did I do a reasonable job of describing the Akashic Records there in my intro? Is there anything? Tell us more about it. I mean, I understand it as something that we're kind of tuning ourselves somehow to a frequency that allows us to connect in with this zero-point energy, and that's how I understand it. That's probably completely wrong, but I think I'd like to hear your side of it.
Well, it's close. You know, in the days when Edgar Cayce was doing the Akashic Records, the energetic frequencies of humanity were much lower. So it was too vast of a chasm for him to go there as we do now. That's why he used trance to get into the records. But now we have all entered fifth dimensional awareness, pretty much all, which means we are aware that we're a soul, not just a body, not just an ego. And right. Once you enter fifth dimensional awareness, and of course we're going through this massive acceleration in our spiritual journey. So all these souls are awakening and they're reaching for more. They're raising their energetic frequency. So as they get into the higher fives, then they are aware of the Akashic records. They probably are more aware of their guides and angels. That's why people are seeing those double 11s everywhere and things like that. So we're in a time where more people are awakening to it. And
Right.
for myself, when I crossed into the sixth dimensional awareness, that shifted even more, because then I became aware that it's not just ego, higher self, soul. It's about coming into oneness. And
Right.
when you do that, at least my experience has been, ego's still there, but it's not as disruptive as it used to be. And higher self is kind of melded into the two. So it's really, most of the time I'm in soul mode.
Yeah.
And that's how it's so easy for me to connect and go in and out. But everybody can connect to their records.
Sure. Yeah. So I'd like to talk a little bit about this whole dimensionality thing, because I think there's a lot of confusion about it, frankly. Most people who are alive on the planet, everybody knows what 3 dimensions means. And when you think about Einstein and his theory of relativity and how he talks about time brings in a 4th dimension. But now you're talking about 5th and 6th dimensions, and I'm pretty sure that some people have some difficulty understanding that. Would you mind explaining that a little bit more? And also, how many more dimensions are there?
Well, I don't know, because I haven't gotten there yet. I've been told there's many, many more. But, some people say there are 10, I've heard 90, it's all over the place. Depends on who you ask. I can only speak to what I've experienced. So 5th dimension is the Akashic records. That's where the soul archive is.
I see.
And then 6th dimension, I am just beginning to connect and get to know it. So the one thing that I've really noticed, and this has only been in the last year or so, is that melding into the oneness with ego, higher self, and soul. And I know when I enter the 6th dimension, the energy feels different, but I don't have enough experience to tell you more about it. We'll all get there eventually. It's just a matter of time.
And so, and it seems to me that the biggest enemy against advancing consciousness is the ego mind itself. And we all have one. We're all, it's all part of the experience of being human. And it does perform a service for us. The problem is many people allow the ego mind to become the master rather than the partner or even the servant. And so consequently, we end up with the kind of world that we're seeing right now that's being exposed more and more. And as you say, I think that exposure is coming about because so many people are waking up. And more people are starting to say, hey, have you seen this? Hey, have you seen that? And it's pretty amazing, this process.
It is. And, people are getting stuff from their guides all the time. They just don't recognize it because they dismiss it as ego. So what I teach is that you can tell the difference, because it'll be like this thought just pops into your head that's totally unrelated to anything you were thinking about. That's your guides. If it's your ego, it's often going to be about what you're thinking about, and it's probably going to be discouraging you from moving forward, because ego's job is to keep you safe until you die.
Yeah, right.
So
exactly.
we're just trying to get ego to partner with us, loosen up a little bit, and move forward. In fact, in the book that you and I were in with the Wellness Universe, the self-care book, there's a meditation that I offer. It's called Powwow with Higher Self, Ego, and Soul. And in that meditation, it's all about making friends with ego. Because I don't know about you, but for years, it was like ego was kind of fighting with me. And one day my guide said to me, it might be a good idea to make friends with your ego.
Exactly.
So that's where the meditation came from, and it changed everything. Because after having a conversation with ego, finding out what she wanted, listening to her needs, then she was more willing to go along and stretch a little bit. It made such a huge difference. I highly recommend it.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely. I completely agree with you. I've had exactly the same experience. The more I fight my ego, the more it fights back. The more I resist it, the more it fights back. But the moment I start to accept my ego and understand what it's really there to do, and to even be grateful for what all of the things that it does, I find that the ego just tends to quiet on its own. And so I don't have to worry so much about this notion of, so many people talk about killing the ego. And I'm thinking, that can't possibly be right, because now you're using violence against yourself in order to get enlightened. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So yeah, I resonate with that. Make friends with your ego. Let your ego do its job, which is to keep you safe. And I mean, have conversations with my ego all the time. Thank you so much for that wonderful piece of information. Keep telling me the warnings that you have, and then maybe I'll be, maybe there will be some real truth there for some reason for me to actually respond accordingly. But I found that often the warnings of the ego are generally imaginary and not really based in reality. They're based in history from earlier times in my life. So anyway.
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of? You remember in the old days when you had the fax and it had to do that handshake with the other end to make the connection? It's
Yep.
kind of like that. So when you go through this process of making friends and connecting with ego, it's like you do the handshake, and now you're
Right.
partners, you're working together.
Yeah. Okay, so coming back to this notion of higher dimensions, I think now I've been reading a lot about stuff like this from David Hawkins. Now he doesn't use exactly the same terminology, but he does talk about elevating consciousness, and he talks about a logarithmic scale where as you move 1 degree or whatever to to the next level, it's like having 10 times as much wisdom or connection to the oneness, or however you choose to phrase it. And is that the sort of thing you're talking about with this dimensional increase? Is that the same sort of thing, or am I kind of misconnecting things?
No, it's similar to that. I don't use those terminologies because I'm not a math and science person, but
Right.
it's all about, as you raise that frequency, it just becomes easier to slip into the fifth dimension to connect with your guides. So for me at this point, it's just a thought. I'm there, in the blink of an eye. Whereas in the beginning, when I started and my frequency was lower, it took more effort. It took going into that meditative state, getting into that deeper, relaxed place so that I could connect with them. And then even sometimes it took a while for anything to come through. For me, the first time I did it, I just saw a purple blob. But the thing
Sorry, you saw what?
a purple blob.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the first thing I got. So you just know that in the beginning, you'll get a little bit. Be in gratitude for that. Keep coming back, because it's really about your commitment, your showing up, practicing, developing the muscle. And then over time, it gets easier and easier.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's very true. And I've noticed for myself, if I look back on my life like 25 years ago or whatever, I can't imagine myself ever going back to that way of being. It's like, over the course of years, learning things and growing and developing and expanding and becoming more aware of everything that goes on within me and becoming more aware of what's going on in the world. I don't ever want to lose that. I don't ever want to go back in time, So I suppose
you won't. That's
Yeah.
a question I asked early on to one of my spiritual teachers, because I was learning about the frequency.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, well, can you, if you stop doing it, can you slip back? And I was told, no, once you've reached that frequency, you stay there. You might not go any further, but you will
Right.
at least stay there.
Right. Yeah, that's reassuring. And at the same time, I mean, I'm just speaking from my own experience. I mean, I just can't imagine going backwards. It just makes no sense to me at all.
No.
And
No, it's so wonderful and delicious. Why would you want to?
Exactly. And the more I learn, the more I want to learn. The more I grow, the more I want to grow. And I don't know if that's the same for other people, but that's certainly my experience. So
Yeah,
I'm constantly looking for new information from wherever I can find it, which is one of the reasons I do this show, by the way. So
yeah, well, I'm wired to be a researcher, so I am always learning and expanding and getting more. And I've been getting a lot of messages from Archangel Metatron, who is the overseer of the Akashic records. So that's expanded so much of my understanding. I'm going to school with Metatron.
yeah, exactly. That's pretty amazing. So now, one of the things that I've heard you talk about, maybe not here today, but in other conversations, you talk about the user manual. And I think that's an interesting concept. I know that how many times do we hear people making jokes about, man, I wish there was a user manual for life. And what they don't realize is Well, here it is. So
Yeah,
why don't you talk a
it's
little bit about that?
yeah. Well, to me, it just made so much sense because I used to build databases. So when I came to this, I had a lot of that left brain stuff going on. And when I started exploring the Akashic records, it was like, wow, this is your user manual because here is your soul schematic. You've got the three aspects of your soul, your gift, your soul specialty, and your tribe, along with the soul gender, and then a life lesson. We get all of those. And then we go and expand into learning more about how to use all of that, as well as connecting with past lives. Like for me, when I first started early on, they gave me this image and showed me this little story of being killed in my last life by my abusive husband. He ran me down with a car. I saw the whole death thing.
Oh my God.
And then they explained to me later, because they give it to you in bits and pieces as you're ready. So I got later that, oh, and by the way, the guy you married in this life who was abusive, same guy, you guys had to work out the karma. And it was like, wow, so many lights going on. I've understood so much more. And that's how it happens. They'll give us pieces as we're ready for it.
That's a pretty amazing story.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is interesting. I know a lot of people talk about past lives and reincarnation and that sort of thing. And I don't deny it. I don't disagree with it, but I can say that I personally have never had that kind of lived experience. I have perhaps, dreamed a little bit about having lived in the past, but it's never felt like, yeah, I was alive back then. Tell me what the experience is like when you become aware of a past life.
Well, when I get it for myself, it's like this little movie just kind of pops in and I get this information. And for when I'm doing it for a client, I go into the record and I do the research and I have this whole protocol I go through asking questions and delving in and finding the answers for them. Just the other day, I did a reading for this lady who is the reincarnation of Frederick Douglass. I mean, that is such mind-blowing stuff, but somebody's got to be, right? Presuming that person is reincarnated. And I have run into a number of people who are connected. In fact, not long ago, I kept getting these pictures of Trump, and he was dressed in Roman attire. He had a laurel wreath on his head, and there's this fire behind him. So I said, are you trying to tell me that Trump was Nero? And they said, no. Turns out Trump was Brutus, and Putin was Caesar. And it's like, oh, wow, well, that makes a whole lot of sense why there's this dynamic going on between them today, right? They're still trying to work it out and they're not doing a very good job.
Very, very interesting stuff, that's for sure. Yeah,
and
well, I mean,
I don't ask for it, David. It just comes when they want me to have a message to share with the world. So of course I made a YouTube video and put it out there for people.
Yeah, that's great. And it's definitely very interesting stuff. And what I was going to say is I think it just highlights this truth, this deeper truth that many people may still have a difficulty understanding, which is we are all one, and it's not just a fancy catchphrase. It's we're connected even through the physical. We're connected through quantum physics. There's just no denying that. And to take away the physical for a moment and think only about the spiritual, how can there be anything but oneness in the spiritual world? I think the beauty of our current situation is that we are given this experience of perceived separation in order to appreciate the truth about oneness. It's something that a lot of people maybe learn over the course of their lifetimes, but it does take a little bit of meditation and grokking, I guess. I like that word, grok. It's a great word.
Yeah.
To understand and integrate the truth of what's really going on. And when I found for myself, once I got to that place of understanding that oneness isn't just a catchphrase, it's not a bumper sticker, it's an actual truth, then I began to see life a whole lot differently. I began to see everything in life with a whole new kind of respect and love and honor and integrity and reverence. So there's a real gift in going through that process, that's for sure.
There is. And when you realize that according to Creator, not me, we are all perfect, magnificent, resplendent, and brilliant souls right now, and tomorrow will be better. We're on a journey, and the journey is all about expansion and higher consciousness. So if you know that, and if you accept that as true about every single soul, then no matter what you might think of them on the third dimensional level, at the fifth dimensional soul level, you have to understand that they are perfect. They're just at a different place on their journey.
Exactly. Yeah, I this is something I share all the time with people. I say, you may not be able to accept this right now, but you are perfect just as you are. And that will always be true about you. The thing is, we got this ego mind that says, oh, that can't possibly be true. That's not true. Look at all these flaws I have. Look what's wrong with me over here. Look at all these mistakes I've made. And so we consequently see ourselves as flawed, broken, dysfunctional beings, which is completely false. Yeah, we go through challenges, and the challenges help us to learn who we really are and to express the truth of who we are, which is, as you say, a divine, magnificent, delightful, amazing creature of light and love in total perfection.
Yeah, I spent many years trying to be invisible because my self-esteem was just in the basement. So when I came to this work, it took a while before it all sunk in. And I finally got to that place of understanding what it means to love yourself, because that was incongruent to me. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't understand how people thought that they felt that way. But now I do, because God told me I'm perfect and God loves me unconditionally. So how can I not love myself? And when you do that and you feel that, then you have so much love for the rest of the world. It's just a marvelous experience.
Yeah, that's great. That's beautiful. And I see Sarah just added a comment. We are born perfect for the life experiences we have chosen. And I totally agree with that. Yeah. And many people say the life experiences you've chosen. What are you talking about? Life is a random walk. Yeah, sure, it is. Yeah. If you only live in your ego, it might look that way. But when you look at it from the perspective of your soul, there's nothing random about it at all. It all makes perfect sense when you look at it from the perspective of the soul.
Yes, I was listening to some of the episodes of Life Mastery TV, and some of the things that I kept hearing about were people in their childhood experiences. And I just wanted to reach out and hug them and say, you chose that family for a reason.
Yep.
It might have felt like you didn't belong there, but you chose them because by not belonging, it caused you to stretch and grow, to work on some of these karmic issues that you had. And that was the same for me. I felt like I didn't belong in my family. And we're so different. We have nothing in common. But it caused me to stretch and grow, to take a different path that my soul intended to take. So it was a catalyst.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I totally agree with you. I mean, I didn't always, like I said, until I was in my 40s. No, I was pretty closed down. And it took a pretty significant life-changing event for me to suddenly realize something's not working here, and I gotta make a change. And in the process of that, I've gone through like 25 years of constant growth and change, and some of it like really big jumps, and some of it very, very gradual. And it's all been amazingly beautiful, and it's all got me to this place of understanding that everything I've done in my life, in this life, and perhaps in any other life I live, I chose it even before I manifested in the physical world. I completely get that now. I also get that you talk about angels, and guides and that sort of thing. We all have these compacts or contracts or agreements with spiritual beings that we made before we came here. And some of those people came with us to have the journey together. And then the moment we're born, we completely forget about that whole thing, and we go through the process of remembering. But meanwhile, there are still some spiritual beings that we made agreements with who decided not to come along for this particular ride, and they're still staying in the spiritual world, providing their support that way. And I think it's just amazing and beautiful. And I guess you can tell I'm getting pretty excited about it.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So have you run into people who tell you that they feel like they aren't from Earth, that they don't belong here, they're uncomfortable?
I've had a few people tell me that. And I just say, okay, tell me more. Let's see where this goes. I'm always curious about, what's going on in people's minds. Unfortunately, we do have to use our voices and our minds and some of the physical attributes in order to be able to communicate this stuff. Some of us haven't reached the level where we can simply share an experience without words or anything else. We have to go through that process. So sometimes the meaning gets confused in the process of transmitting the information through those mechanisms. But I think it's fun to dig in and say, well, what's really going on? Let's find out.
Yeah, well, the amazing thing when I delved into this is that those people who have those feelings are usually starseeds. Their soul originated on another planet, and then through successive lifetimes, they decided to come to Earth, and now they're karmically connected. So there are, multiple lifetimes on Earth. But it's fascinating because so many of them, they feel gravity as way heavier than the rest of us do. They
Oh, yeah.
just feel uncomfortable. It's like every day for them is trying to run in water, if you
I
can
see.
imagine.
Yeah.
There are others who will spend time staring up at the sky, looking for home, even though they're not conscious that's what they're doing. They're feeling this longing to reconnect with what they think of as home.
Well, now that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I notice, I was a pilot for years. I love being in the sky and flying. And at night in particular, I love looking at the stars. I never thought of it as this is me longing for something else. But I always love looking out at the sky and at the stars and just the magnitude and beauty of space. And, how we can ridiculously believe that we are somehow unique life forms in the universe it blows my mind that people actually believe that.
Makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. So here we are, and we're in what you call, I guess, the age of awakening. Now, you said you've seen a lot of this stuff going on, and you talk about, fifth and sixth and beyond dimensions. Say more about this age of awakening and what it really means and what's going to happen to all of humanity.
Yeah, so we're right now in what Metatron calls the cosmic wave of transformation. And I first got a message about that in 2017. So I got this whole story about how humankind is in the next evolution. That's what we're going through. So it's moving out of those old lower fifth dimensional and fourth dimensional energies and moving up the scale into the fifth. So the souls are going through this whole awakening process where they're actually having physical symptoms, because what happens is your body, it has to catch up with where your soul is energetically.
Right.
So when that happens, you can have things like, muscle cramps and flu-like symptoms, fatigue, all kinds of things happen. And it's not a physical thing. It is physical because it's your body, but it's catching up energetically. So a lot of people are going through that. And it's not a fun thing. It's like those growing pains when you were a kid and your legs hurt so bad because, they were stretching. So we're going through that now. And what Metatron promised is that it will be the new golden age of humanity. When we go through this, we will come out the other side where people really do see each other as souls. There will be no bigotry, no hatred, no corruption. That's going to all be cleaned up. It will be, for a time at least, a utopia. In fact, I got another message from the divine feminine consciousness that was a little bit militant, talking about how we're not going to take this crap anymore. We're going to clean things up. We're going to fix education. We're going to create Earthtopia. That's what they called it.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds beautiful. And, obviously, it seems like there's really no place for us to go but up. We've kind of hit rock bottom in our current system. And, we have to, well, I don't know, up, down, they're relative terms. We have to make a change, that's for sure. And so I totally agree with you. And this awakening process, it can be uncomfortable. I know that there's a lot of people in resistance about waking up to the truth.
Yeah, the interesting thing about it is that, when it starts happening, you get those symptoms, you want to resist, as you say. But if you instead breathe through it and relax, it'll smooth out faster. And it will be worth it. But one of the things also is that not all the souls presently incarnated agreed to go through this big transformative experience. They didn't want any part of it. So in 2017, when Metatron described this cosmic wave of transformation, he said, you either got to get up on that tsunami and ride the wave, or you're going to fall off. At the time, of course, I couldn't have known, but then what do we get? We get coronavirus. The coronavirus is the facilitating feature there. That's the cosmic wave of transformation. So It's a convenient means for the souls who don't want to stay for the awakening and the painful parts of it to exit the planet in large numbers.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's their choice. They'll come another time. But those of us light workers who contracted to be here for this epic battle between light and dark as we move to Earthtopia accepted that it was going to be a challenge, and we're ready for it. This is why we came to the planet at this time.
Right. And what would life be without challenges anyway?
Boring.
Exactly. Yeah. So Sarah says, I love to look out at the sky at night, especially when Orion is visible. Interesting you mentioned Orion there, Sarah, which made so much sense when my Akashic record said I originated from the Pleiades. I've been here for very many lifetimes. Yes. Well, I don't know if you know Sarah, but I know Sarah personally. She's a very, very sweet lady, and she and I we're doing another episode right after this. So
Awesome.
it's gonna be fun. But yeah, it's interesting about Orion. I've always had an affinity for Orion. Whenever I see that constellation, I mean, I'm definitely drawn to it. It's a powerful constellation. I'm sorry?
Can I tell you about that?
Sure, go ahead.
Because before I talk to anybody, I always look in their records to see what their matrix is.
Uh-oh.
So you are originally from Pleiadians, or from the Pleiades. So when you see all those people online talking about Pleiadians, that's you. They're the visionary people. They're the ones who will leap before they look. They love starting projects. They love hitting the goal, but they don't like the middle part. So they need to get people to help them with that. So they're amazing, very high vibe, charismatic, inspirational people. They're just really interesting. And there's a lot of them on the planet right now. So they're facilitating this awakening that we're going through.
That's interesting. I mean, you did describe some of my qualities there my ego says, don't admit it. But okay. There's some truth there for sure. And you also talked a little bit about the whole the struggle portion, where we're exhibiting physical symptoms. It's funny you talked about flu symptoms and that sort of thing. I have had respiratory challenges since about 2008. And it's over the last year, it's gotten worse. And of course, we could write that off to COVID-19 or something. But I, haven't had any of the other symptoms. It's just been a challenge in breathing. It's like I feel pressure on my chest, and it's it's not so bad that I can't, function from day to day, but it has had an impact on some of the things that I can do. And right now, I am feeling wide open and breathing quite easily, but sometimes it's a challenge. So I understand what you mean about the, how we can have physical symptoms that come about as a result of the, the difficulty of going through this process.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we always have to qualify it by saying if you're having physical symptoms, you should get it checked out by a doctor to be sure. Because everything is not spiritual. But there are a lot of people who are going through symptoms like that now.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And, you're right. We all need to rely on some external support from time to time, whether it's a Western doctor or an alternative medicine doctor or whatever you do, you have to honor the truth of what's going on for yourself.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, you talked about people agreeing or not agreeing through this process. So that brings me to the subject of purpose. Why are we here? What is my purpose? And how important really is it to know that?
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting question because, what happens is once we leave this body and we go back to the fifth dimension, souls very often will quickly turn around and jump back into a body because the experience is more exhilarating. It's where we have more expansion. It's faster growth. Mm-hmm. So that's part of why we're here. We said, hey, that sounds like a lot of fun. We want to be part of that. And we are at a place in our journey as a soul that we're ready to take on this kind of a big challenge because it is a big one. Right. And as far as purpose, so that gets into another aspect of the soul, and that is your gift. So your gift informs upon what your purpose is, but the prime directive from Creator is come into this third dimensional body, figure out what feeds your soul and do it, and have a really great time, because it's supposed to be living. It's not supposed to be a job. And we
That's right.
forget that part of the equation. So finding out what feeds your soul usually is connected to your gift. So for you, your gift is all about being a truth teller. You are sharing your own original truth, and you are a channel, whether you have noticed it or not. You know, if you find yourself speaking and words come out of your mouth and you're like, who said that? That's your channel.
Yeah, yeah.
So when that happens, write it down so you don't forget about it, because those are beautiful messages from divine that either are for you or meant to be shared. And one of the big challenges for the particular gift of truth teller is that they come into the world and they just embody truth because they're connected. They're getting this divine truth to share.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they share it comes out in a very undiplomatic, sometimes brusque fashion.
Oh,
So
yeah.
as children, they get shut down. They get told, you know, stop.
That's right.
Very suppressed. Is
Mm-hmm.
that what you had?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
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 So the challenge is to overcome that and use your voice, because as the truth teller, you've got to use your voice.
You know, it's interesting that you're hitting all these nails right on the head, you know, and I think, you know, integrity and truth are my highest values for sure. You know, I'm not going to tell you that I've always been 100% truthful. I mean, I'm a human being. I've made my mistakes. I've done bad things, just as I would say every other person on the planet has done at one time or another. But ultimately, when it really comes down to it, truth is more important to me than anything else. You know, I remember, I think it was Mahatma Gandhi who said that consistency is important, but truth is more important. And I really resonated with that statement. And I think he hit the nail on the head with that one too. I'm not sure if he said it, but I'm attributing it to him at the moment. But yeah, so purpose. Now, the way I've seen it, purpose is something that I couldn't possibly know until I knew the truth of who I am. It's something that became more clear to me as I began to understand that I'm not this. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my role. I'm not my name. I'm not, you know, my emotions. I'm not any of that stuff. I am the creator and experiencer of those things. And as I began to understand that, I began to understand that who I am and what I am is a much different thing than I used to think years ago. And as I came to grips with that, and I teach other people to do the same for themselves, once you know the truth of who you are, then your purpose begins to come clear to you. It's because your purpose is, that's right, because your purpose is a part of who you are. That's been my experience.
Well, it's how you're wired from creator. So you are wired to be a truth teller. And what that means as far as purpose goes is that your purpose is to share divine truth with the world, but you get to do that in whatever way feeds your soul. So it could be expressing yourself through art, through music, any way that you're.
Yeah, I do all of those too.
Yeah, so all of those things. And it's about first giving yourself the gift of truth and then sharing it with others, because everybody has all of the gifts within them, but they have the primary gift, you know, at like a 45% level. So that's where you're an expert. So you lean into that, you get really good at it, you share it with the world in the way you choose, because they're not telling you how to use it. It's your gift, you get to choose. And then you can help other people find that small, infinitesimal part of truth teller within themselves and learn to use it more expansively. That at the core is what we're all doing. I'm a researcher. I've always wondered, why am I obsessively researching? What is the matter with me? Am I OCD? And then I discover it's my gift. I'm wired to research, and then I teach. It's part of my gift is teaching.
Right. So you are, in a sense, a truth seeker, truth finder. And I guess I tend to be a truth teller. So I probably get in more trouble than you do.
Well, yeah, because that's the big challenge for the truth teller. You know, they get shut down so much because as children, especially, it's like, you can't say that stuff in polite society. So they grow up not speaking, and then they've got to unlearn that and relearn how to speak their truth. Now, it's kind of like walking a really fine line you know, potholes all over, because for some truth tellers, they get really bitter because nobody wants to hear them. And they become what I call prickly people, because it's like, I know the truth and you should listen to me. But it doesn't work that way. So the big challenge is learning how to tell that truth, but just soften the edges, because you've got to be heard. That's what feeds your soul. When you share that truth and somebody acknowledges and validates that they heard you, that gets this energetic feedback loop going between you, which is what feeds your soul. And that's what you're always looking for.
That's great. Yeah, and very true, I think, in my experience anyway. What I have learned is that it's always possible to share something with someone in a compassionate way. It doesn't have to come out as, you know, this is the truth and you better listen to me, period. End of conversation. You know, I have a friend who is a very strong believer in a Christian religion, I'll say. And he is constantly quoting biblical verses to me. And I think, okay, this is his message. This is his truth. And I tell him, I said, you know, I really respect you as a human being, and I love you as a brother. And I don't agree with some of the things that you say from the Bible. I don't think that they're necessarily absolute truth. So we have this difference of opinion and a difference in perspective, and we seem to be able to do it with mutual respect. This is something that I think we can all do if we choose.
We can, absolutely. It's a matter of giving that other person the space to be who they are, and also just honor that they're in a different place on their journey.
Exactly.
This friend of yours one day will expand beyond keeping God in a box, and he'll start to understand some of these greater truths. Meanwhile, you can just plant little seeds and allow them to sprout or not. A big part of what we're all doing is, when we share our gift, we have to disconnect from the results, because the seeds we plant don't always sprout. So it's like, if they're not interested, you bless them and move on.
That's a great piece of advice for anybody under any circumstances. Yes, have your dream. Yes, put your effort out there, and just try not to be attached to the outcome, because it may not turn out the way you imagined it would.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think it was Neil Donald Walsh said in one of his books, "It'll be perfect no matter how it turns out." It's a great line, and it's always stuck with me. And I thought, yeah, no matter what happens, I can get something out of it. The world can benefit in some way from it, even if it's just to learn, here's a way that doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You just reminded me of something I wanted to share with people, because it's so important. And that is, don't allow your gift to victimize you. You know, there are a lot of channels that I've encountered who talk about getting woken up at 3:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is. And I always ask them, do you enjoy that? And most of them say no. And I explain to them, well, you are a free choice individual. You have sovereignty over your soul. That means you get to say when. You can tell your guides, you know what, gang, I don't like getting woken up in the middle of the night. Why don't you check me at 10 a.m.? We'll have a date then. And they'll do it. We just have to ask.
Right.
But we've turned ourselves into victims by believing that they're running the show. And that's so backwards.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you just triggered a thought in my head. It's the word sovereign. Sovereign. I don't know if somebody else has said that before, but that's what hit me when you were speaking.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
There you go. There's your divine channel.
It was nice. I like it. So I want to talk a little bit more about purpose, because it's an important topic, and some people, you know, may struggle with the idea of connecting to their purpose. So how can the Akashic records help them to find, or to get more clarity about their purpose, I guess is the question I'd like to ask.
Well, if you know how to read them, you simply go in and you get the information, and bam, you got it. Now you just study all of the ins and outs of your gift, and then apply it in your own life. You know, when you learn about your gift, which I do in my soul introduction, that's the whole point. It's like, wow, I suddenly make so much more sense to myself. Now I know why I'm a compulsive people watcher, because I'm reading their energy and I'm picking up all this information. I didn't know that. And we tend to think that everybody is just like us. So we don't realize that these things that are our gifts that are really special are different from what other people are doing. So it's really simple if you know how to do it. The tricky thing for people who haven't practiced and learned how to access the records is they go in and they have this vision that it's reading a book. It's not. We will get it by feelings in our body. We'll get it by hearing something, seeing something, or just a knowing in the gut. Depends on how your gift works. So it's there, but you got to do the work to get to the point where you can access that yourself. Now, I do teach it. I have a class I run periodically where I teach them how to access their records and get that exact information. But it takes commitment and time, practice. Meanwhile, just connect. One of the gifts I want to share with your audience is a guided visualization called Connecting with Guides. And it was downloaded for this exact purpose, to guide you through the process so that you can actually see, touch, hear your guide. And then at the end, you stay in that energy and ask anything you want. But it takes practice.
Right. Well, sure. I mean, everything that you want to be good at takes practice. You know, there's very few people who are just instantly natural at whatever it is they want to do. I mean, we're all natural at being who we are if we give ourselves a chance to do that. But to connect to something that we don't fully understand, well, clearly you have to learn what it means and how to understand it. Not everybody is a database architect like you were, so they may not completely comprehend some of the terminology that you use in order to be able to get there. But I know you have that book. I've just forgotten the title. Can you just restate the title again? Akasha Unleashed.
The Missing Manual to You.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, and so people can find that on Amazon or on your website?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
They can click through my website to Amazon to get it.
And your website is also Akasha Unleashed, right?
Yeah, akashaunleashed.com.
Great. So I'll definitely, and we'll definitely put a link to that on the recording site for this, and we'll get people to go over there and maybe download that visualization.
There's one more thing I want to tell you about the purpose, and that is some people actually figure it out on their own. They'll come to me and they're already doing their purpose. They're so happy. You can see it and you can feel it with them because they're just so connected and they're in this really blissful zone. So the trick, if you want to try and figure out what it is think about the thing that you would do for free because it feels so wonderful. That's connected to your gift. That's your purpose. Figure out how to take that and do it in your life in whatever way you choose, and it will expand from there.
Well, I got to tell you, I am mostly doing this for free because I do love it, and I think it's really important work to do, and I give most of it away. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, I'm in a financial situation where I can afford to do that. Not everybody can do that. But there's nothing wrong with asking for compensation for the gift that you offer. And in fact, it may be more valuable to the other person if you ask them to give you some money in exchange. That way they really feel like they're getting something of value.
Yeah, that's massive truth, because what happens is there's this thing called fair exchange of energy. Yeah. So if you're just giving it to people, they're not compensating you in some way. They're not getting the full benefit because they didn't exchange energy with you.
That's right. Yep. And I totally acknowledge that. And at the same time, I think that some of this information needs to be just out there. That's what my heart tells me. So, when people want to go for a deeper dive, then, I will charge them money for that. I'll do coaching sessions and that sort of thing. But, just general information that I think could benefit a large number of people, then I'm going to keep putting it out there because that's what I'm called to do. So,
yeah. But
now
put it out there in a book, and then there is an exchange of energy.
Sure. Yeah, I've done that too. Got a couple of books out there. But I can't stop myself. This stuff it just keeps coming. I'm okay. Here you go. I'm like a sprinkler.
Well, that's what it's like being a divine channel. It just keeps coming.
That's right. And I do get some positive response from quite a few people actually, and it's good to know. So it's touching the people who need to hear it. And that's what matters. You know, I can't, like you say, if I was concerned about, wait a minute, I'm not healing 100 million people, well, I'm a failure. Yeah, that's definitely not the right attitude. The way I look at it now, if I heal just one person, or if I help one person to heal throughout my lifetime, that's it. I've done my job. And if 2 or more, or 3 or 4, however, then that's just bonus.
Well, you can also call on your angels and guides and say, hey, I've done my part. I've put it out there. You need to bring the people to come and see it.
Yeah. Now that's all right. I like that. I like that.
They
That's
are
a good
here to
idea.
serve.
Yeah, right. So now let's just talk a little bit about this cosmic transformation more. You know, that's a whole new realm that I haven't really dived into too much in the concept of life mastery, but I think it's an important concept, and I'd like to hear more about it from your perspective. I mean, we've kind of been talking about it anyway, but I think we've been focusing on what's happening here on Earth. I'm kind of interested in the big scheme, how you see it.
Well, in the big scheme, we've got to purge the earth and get the corruption and the hatred and bigotry out so that we can move into that new golden age of humanity. So it's just, you know, the ones who don't want to be part of moving forward are exiting. And the reason I think it's important to share this message is that there's so much fear connected with the virus. And if you understand, your body or your soul does not leave your body until it's ready to go. So it's going to go one way or another when it's ready. The virus is just a convenient means for them to do it. So for me, at least, having that perspective brings a lot of peace, because I've got a lot to do. I don't think I'm going tomorrow, but if I do, that's fine too. It's just, you know, be here, be present in the moment, use your gifts and all the wisdom and richness that you bring to the world, share it, get out there. Use that energy, come together with people and lift them up, and we will change the world.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, be here now and don't worry about what happened yesterday or what's going to happen tomorrow, because there is no point, you know. Just be. There's nothing more to say. Just be.
It's perfect. That's what you're doing. You are here being and expanding your consciousness.
Exactly.
Do what makes you feel wonderful, that feeds your soul. Get into that place, because when you come into alignment with your soul, and that is when you're living your purpose, it's truly the Holy Grail. That's what we're searching for. It is soul nirvana. You will feel that peace that passes understanding, bliss. It's just wonderful, because you're mostly not in resistance. You're going with the flow. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you never have any problems in your life. It just means that you're able to overcome them way easier than ever before. And so you're always in the flow.
Yeah, that sounds like grace to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And the other thing that I would like to say about that is, if I work on elevating my own consciousness and you do the same, then just by definition, we are elevating the consciousness of the planet and therefore of the entire cosmos. We are contributing in our own small way to make that happen. And I think another thing to understand is that, now David Hawkins talks about this a lot in his books. An elevation of consciousness means that you need fewer people at that level in order to offset the negativity of the people below. And so if you have, you know, 1 or 2 people at the level of Christ or Buddha or somebody like that, those 2 or 3 people are enough to offset everybody who hasn't yet reached that level of consciousness. And I think, I don't know if that's true or not. That's his belief system. And it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me on some level, because it's like an increase in consciousness. This is what he means by it's logarithmic or exponential, I guess, in the sense that 1 level increase in consciousness means you are now about the equivalent consciousness of 10 people below you or something like that. And No, it's not about competing. It's not about saying, oh, I'm better than you because I'm more conscious. No, that's not the point. The point is elevating your consciousness so that we can collectively reduce the suffering on the planet and in the universe. That's really what it's about, I think.
Well, you're first doing it for yourself because you're lifting yourself up. And then it just flows from you because you can't keep it in. It's so wonderful.
That's right.
But the other thing that's happening that I think he's talking about is that when you do this, your energy shifts. And when your energy shifts, people around you either have to shift to go with you or they have to leave because they can't stay the same. That's just a quantum physics principle. That's the way it happens. And so as you do this and you keep spreading that energy, and then the people you spread it to shift and other people shift, you get this geometric progression.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
If I understand what you're saying, I think that's
no. Well, that's a different perspective, but I think it's also very, very valid and very correct. This is not how David Hawkins describes it, but I think I like your explanation better, to be honest, because it does make more sense to me. And I think the more we each do our work, and it is work, it's not going to be a walk in the park to elevate your consciousness. You're going to have to do some work. But it's enjoyable work. It's kind of like working in the garden, I think, Yeah, you don't like pulling out the weeds. Maybe you don't like so much, digging out those rocks or making the space for the plants to grow, or even hoeing out the rows to plant the seeds. But you sure like looking at the flowers and the vegetables and the fruit and everything else that come out as a result of your effort. And that's the thing we're talking about here. Making the effort so that the fruit is born and you get to enjoy that.
Yeah. And again, you're doing it for yourself first, and then other people benefit. So if you always focus on doing those things for yourself first, it's not selfish. It's the most selfless thing you can do.
Exactly.
Because when you do that, you make a big difference. You make ripples in the pond.
Right. But if we go back to what we said at the beginning, we're all one anyway. So if I'm doing it for myself, I am doing it for you.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Deborah, it's been an hour that just zipped right by, and here we are nearly at the end. Right? I'm wondering if there's any gift you'd like to offer in terms of wisdom, in addition to whatever physical gift you like to offer, but something that you'd like to close with before I finish up the show.
Yeah, I think if you will just commit to doing 10 or 15 minutes of meditation a day, and if you skip some days, it's okay, don't beat up on yourself. But Metatron gave me this challenge in December that I did in January. It's a 21-day meditation challenge. And I was tasked with showing up and doing 15 minutes a day, just being there, allowing the process to unfold. I learned so much. There's a book coming from this, and there's going to be a course coming from this, because it was very transformational. And I think it will help so many people who want to get into that energy and start their ascension process, or, juice it up a bit. Yeah. So I'm all about empowering people. Yes, I can do readings for you, but if you want to learn it yourself and do it, I'm all behind that. So I created a special page for your audience. It's akashaunleashed.com/LMTV. On that page, you'll find the meditation I talked about earlier, connecting with guides. Then I also included a special access prayer for the Akashic records. That will help you. It will help with your confidence, and it will help to get the connection and the focus. And then there's a closing prayer that goes with that as well. So take that, use that, practice it. And if you miss a day here and there, it's okay, because it took me almost a month to do that 21-day challenge, because life. But I did complete it.
Well, that sounds very, very lovely and very generous. And so can you just repeat that? That's akashaunleashed.com/LMTV. I will make sure that link appears on my webpage where this recording resides. And so people can go to that anytime they want to. Wonderful. Meanwhile, I just want to say thank you so much, Deborah, for being here. It's been an honor to have you here. And I've just really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thanks so much for inviting me, and I'm sorry for the craziness at the beginning, but we did it.
Well, we got through it, and that's all part of life, isn't it? You know, things don't always go the way we want them to.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So thank you all for watching today's program. Remember, you can see a recording of this and every other show that I have. It's on my website at lifemasterytv.com. That's life-mastery-tv.com. I truly hope you enjoyed this wonderful episode with my guest, Deborah. And I'd like you to be aware that you're going to receive an email over the next couple of hours inviting you to offer some feedback. And I really would appreciate it if you'd leave a positive review for us, because it helps us to spread the word and get more people involved in the journey of life mastery. So the last thing I do is I always close my shows with this. It's what I call the life mastery mantra. I invite you to remember it and practice it every day of your life. It goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, this is David McLeod, your Life Mastery Coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. See you next time. Bye-bye.